Alright, YouTube, it's time for Occult video number 53 on Creepypasta. I've had a couple people ask me over the last few months about my opinions of this phenomena, and it goes hand in hand with memetics, really. It's certainly a new age style thing within the occult. That is, you heard that case regarding the girls there that had been, like, they were mentally troubled and they thought Slender Man was real, and so they tried to kill one of their friends in the name of this, what people considered, I guess, to be a demonic being or something. And everyone was all warped and upset and sort of fucked out about it. Really, though, when you're talking about creepypasta, at best, what it would be is a combination of urban legends, whether they have an origin or they're originating as actual, like, online material or something like that, with creative writing. I don't see anything wrong with this, by the way. Slender Man case aside, you have many thousands or tens of thousands of these sort of weird stories circulating online, and that's just like the different characters and the different settings that are being recycled and made into new material. I see it as a way for people to approach writing in a more entertaining way than they get in school. It's like back over a decade ago, of course, when people were kind of worried about Pokemon because they thought it had to do with sorcery or they thought people were wasting their time with it. In reality, some of the younger people playing with their Pokemon cards or something, they were certainly expanding their memory capabilities. They were learning the rudiments, if they didn't already understand them, of math, because you had to count in order to actually do these things, simple multiplication even, or division or whatever. Certainly it was entertaining, and it was a way for people to expand perhaps their interest in a foreign culture as well, specifically Japanese culture. Now, other people thought, the moralists thought, oh, it's terrible, it's sorcery, whatever. I thought it was great. Same with Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings. Any of these things that becomes really expansive and interesting, I see it as a good thing. I think that it gives people, I think people give, especially younger children, far too little credit for expanding their own mental capabilities if left to their own devices, because naturally they will. They're not going to do it in school. In school, they're learning how to memorize what's right, quote unquote. With creepypasta, it's much the same. You should see it as an expansive sort of creative writing course, in which potentially people are also learning about urban legends, perhaps the social impact thereof, certainly certain anthropological concepts, and mythology in a way as well, local history even in a folkish way. A lot of these things are going to be based on sort of the local urban folklore. Now, your great-grandparents or maybe grandparents' generations probably has a lot of knowledge on these things. Your parents, not so much. There's a disconnect in the millennial, not the millennial, the sort of boomer and Gen Xers, where they sort of forsook this stuff. This generation, the millennials and the younger people, are rekindling that sort of stuff. In many cases, you have someone who's under 30. They're more interested really in the stuff their grandparents were into than the stuff their parents are into. They're not into necessarily the fast cars and the lines of coke sort of lifestyle. This is an academic pursuit and should be seen as such. Now, does it have any bearing within the occult itself in a more strict, a more academic sense? Yes, in many ways it could. You could see it as a form of memetics, potentially. It certainly has a payload that it imparts upon the reader. It certainly can be occult as far as being about witches or demons or mythological sort of paranormal stuff. It can go into literal, like, pagan mythology. I see no harm in it whatsoever. I'm not one of those people. I know the tendency is when people get older, a lot of times they become more moralist and so forth. I'm not. No, I'm becoming less so over time, honestly. I have less and less appreciation for authority and moralism and, we gotta take life so seriously. We're harming our chillins with this fucking creepypasta stuff. I disagree totally. I think it's completely harmless, even where it's not overlapping in any way with the occult. Now, perhaps that's my bias. Most people, of course, they still think of, like, witchcraft. They think of, like, devil worship, and they think it's evil or something like that. I don't, of course, because I practice these things. I actually study them and make a living editing occult texts and writing some of my own at the same time. But I'm seeing it as an extension of academia, really. I've seen people when I was in college who supposedly these are very intelligent individuals. These are the people with like the 3.8 GPA, the valedictorian, the person seeking like a double master's or something, and some of them couldn't write for shit. Honestly, a lot of when it came down time, unless it was in an English class where people are potentially English majors, I'm trying to peer edit, peer review their work. I'm trying to look through it for grammar and spelling errors and so forth. And I find that some of these people, now these aren't, 10-year-olds, these are people who are in their teens, early 20s, like I was, and they're functionally illiterate. I don't see the internet as a bad thing when it comes to literacy. And if you want a good basis within the occult, you're going to be doing a hell of a lot of studying, not just in writing and reading, but potentially math as well, astronomy, all the natural sciences, chemistry. If you're interested in alchemy, you're going to have to understand at least basic chemical terms. In order to do that, it makes sense to broaden people's horizons. So no, I'm not seeing a problem with it. I think that its relation to the occult is tangential at best. That is, that there may be occult material written about within the creepypasta, within the urban legends being spun. But it's really more about folkishness. It's really more about tradition. It's about a rekindling of interest in sort of the folk tales and stories that your grandparents and great-grandparents, they loved this stuff. They passed the time telling spook stories. Your parents' generation or your older siblings' generation, if you're my age, probably was not particularly interested in such things. The only introduction that I got from such things outside of the realm of books at the library, and that was a very limited selection, let's face it, for most of us, was really sort of in the 90s, the So Weird and stuff like that, sort of the occult or paranormal inspired sort of young adult and kids shows. And that's really all that you got as far as occult imagery goes. Now, though, with the internet, it's easy. You can make your own occult literature. You can absorb literally anything. Anything that's been released for the last couple thousand years is already there in some form. Whether you have to pay 99 cents for the ebook or buy the soft cover copy, or whether you can get it for free as a PDF on some arcane forum somewhere, really makes no difference. Everything is now at your disposal. It's sort of the death of the centrality of the flow of information. I think it's a good thing. I think it's a little bit of a power to the people thing when you're talking about sort of the creative writing, the fiction, paranormal literature being decentralized. It's no longer, well, Stephen King's new book came out, I'm going to read that. No, it's now, today there were 1,000 new stories posted on some website somewhere that deal with all of these weird topics. And now I'm going to spend a couple hours reading through some of them. And I have an appreciation for that. I think it's a good thing for the world. That's about all. Peace out.